So once your blocks are all made for your quilt along project, it's time to add the sashing. And today I'm going to give you some tips for choosing your sashing fabric. Welcome to Epida Studio. My name is Elizabeth and I help you make beautiful things with quilting, pochaging, and embroidery. So you might have chosen what fabric you want to use for your sashing right back when you were choosing your fabric for your blocks and for your whole project. So if you've chosen it, that's fine, but I would encourage you to still go through this process and try a couple of different fabrics for your sashing, because you might get an interesting surprise, or you might decide to stick with what you already chose. But either way, this is a good process to work through. And this is a process of auditioning a couple of different fabrics, because sometimes when your blocks are made, then what looks good for sashing is different than what you thought it was going to be. So to audition fabrics, just take some of the fabrics that you're thinking of and open them up on a table. And there's no need to press them all at this point because you're just getting an idea for color. And then once you have it opened up, then just lay your block in the middle and you can get an idea of how it looks. So we can see this fabric, this soft muted colors is clearly a background fabric. That's going to give a specific look. It's not bold and in your face. It's going to let the block be the star of the show. You know, if we go to a darker gray, so with this dark gray, we can see it more clearly defines the block. The block doesn't blend into the border as much. And so this one would also be nice. It's just a different look. And then if you have fabric at home, throw in a couple wild cards. Throw in some things that you think that will never work, because sometimes you get a nice surprise. So this blue, it doesn't really blend with any of these fabrics, but I just grabbed it to try it out. And that actually is not too bad when I look at it. I don't think I'm going to choose it, but that might be a nice choice. And then here's another wild card that I picked, this red. And this red, you can see, is kind of overpowering. It's pretty strong, but it also, to me, it makes the colors in the block pop a little bit differently. It makes the block look more varied. So again, I don't think I'm going to pick this red, but somebody else might really like this red with this block. So throw in a couple wild cards, because sometimes you'll get a nice surprise. So what fabrics did I end up using for sashing in this? Well, I actually made two pieces with the blocks that were made with the same fabrics. And so I made 8 blocks and I made 2 different pieces, and I will talk about these in more detail in a later video. But with one of them, I used a really light sashing, so we can see how that looks. And then in another one, I used a dark sashing. So I went with one light and one dark. And we can see how it totally changes the look of the blocks, even though the blocks are made with the same fabric. So take the time to audition sashing fabrics before you start cutting it. One other little tip is, before you decide and start cutting, be sure to measure the fabric that you have to make sure that you have enough of it. In one of my really big pieces, I was deciding on sashing and I had all these fabrics, and so I picked one. I thought, oh, this is the one I'm going to use. And then I measured it and I realized, oh, I didn't have enough of that. So measure it first before you start cutting into it, for sure. And then another thing you can do is, if you have almost enough but not quite, then when I give the instructions for sashing, I'm going to say a specific width, but you can adjust that. So in one of my other projects, I didn't quite have enough, but I made my sashing a little bit narrower so that I would have enough. So you can also adjust that way. Remember that the pattern is just a suggestion, and you can feel free to make it your own in any way that you want. So in the next video, I'm going to talk about what size sashing to cut and how to put it in. And then again, If you have any questions or comments, or if you want to tell us what sashing you're going to be using, then feel free to drop a comment. I'd love to hear it. And if you missed the other videos, you can go back and rewatch them. They're all in the summer 2025 Quilt Along playlist.